Hello, welcome. My name is Rob Klaus with the CCPIA. I am the Director of Education. Today we are going to do a mock inspection of this commercial space. This is a wide open space. It's currently a coffee shop. Today it's a coffee shop, and tomorrow it could be something else. I believe at one time, looking at the outside, it was a car repair shop. So with that, let's get started. So most inspections you perform, you should probably begin with a preliminary walkthrough. That's a great opportunity for you to look at the building, look inside the building, see what elements you have to inspect, as well as to help find some of the hidden spaces. It'll also give you a chance to settle in and maybe even have a conversation with your client. I've already done that with this building, and so what we want to do is really get started here on the outside. We're going to take on this building, it's a masonry building, solid masonry constructed. We'll talk about that as we walk around the sides. With solid masonry construction, we have to identify how old it is. Best guess we have, it's about a 1926 build. So we're almost over 100 years old. With that, we know we're going to have some wear and tear. We know we're going to have age issues. The real key to being a really good commercial inspector is being able to put all that into context. If it was a brand new building, you might talk about cracking as being very serious. In a 1926 building, some of this cracking could have been here for 60, 70, 80 years and not be as detrimental. So what we'll do is we'll get started, and we're going to kind of move this way through the building. As we go through here, we're going to look at the masonry, and the real key to looking at the masonry is making sure our horizontal to verticals are very well sealed. That would include things like this caulking and the sills. At one point, this sill probably opened up, and that's why they put in the steel. These windows are designed because I think my hypothesis is this was once a car repair shop. These doors open and close. We have 3 of these across the front of the building. The one interesting thing that we have on the front of the building that I like are these wheel kicks. These wheel kicks were designed that as I pull the car in, I didn't hit the building. The front of my tire would gloss off of that and bounce it off. It's the equivalent of putting a bollard or some other protection on. When we have a fixed window like this in our glazing, we really have to be cognizant of this little rubber strip that's right here. We call that a storefront strip or a glazing strip. These things are typically a rubber or a plastic material, and they tend to shrink in the heat. And they tend to shrink as they age. And when they shrink, they open up. Here's a great opening right here. And that opening, as water sheds down that glass, will get in there, get behind the aluminum structure, and start decaying, not necessarily the aluminum, but getting water on the inside of the building, mold, all those other things. So just simply identifying that, and you can come in here with a mastic and actually caulk that, and it becomes well sealed. As we move further across the building, we have some wooden elements that need to be watched. Make sure they're solid and not rotted. Check the door. This particular door opens inward. We typically don't like commercial buildings to open inward because if we're trying to get out, we could get caught. Because of pressure, we need to have doors open outward. So I would probably make a comment on that in my report. It is what it is, most likely, but it's something that my clients should be aware of. We'd exercise the door, make sure it travels well over the concrete, and we'll continue forward. As we move forward, we're looking at the masonry, we're stepping back. We look at the lentils. The lentil is what's above every window and door. We want to make sure that that steel is solid, it's not warped, it's not rusted. We'll check that out. They've added this iron or steel decorative piece, give it a little bit of flair. We're going to want to make sure that we see all of those bolts are solid. We don't see the rust scaffing from them, and we're going to try to watch our anchor points. I'm not going to get up there with a ladder and put pressure upon it. But what I am going to do is look for the visual clues and to see if there's any damage. But with that, we're done with this portion of the outside, and what we'll do is we'll migrate over to the other side of the building. With this building, like any other building, the macro approach is just as important as the micro approach to the inspection. So on a macro side of this building, I'd really want to look and see what this entire face looks in a totality. Is it plumb? Is it level? Is it square? Is there cracking up at the parapet? Is there openings? Or is it look keen? In this particular building, it looks very, very keen. And then I'll start getting the micro approach. And when I come up with the micro, again, it's looking at the sills, looking at the caulking, looking at the glass sealant, and then I'm going to watch our lentils. And are they good, or are they starting to expand? And then I want to look to each side of the lentil to see if there's anything reflecting upward. And in this particular window, this looks very good. This is a unique building, and you'll see that as we get inside. Our particular building and our client on this is only occupying the front third of the building. And so when we get up on the roof and we're looking around, you're gonna go, wow, this is a big space. It doesn't equate proportionally to what it looks like on the inside. But what we'll actually see when you look at the paint on this building, where the paint stops is ostensibly where our client's responsibility is stopping as well. And so we'll continue forward. And I'll look at this lentil. And this particular side over here on this side, you'll see some of the masonry's moving as missing. And so that'll be a spot that we're going to want to probably recommend some attention to, just to keep that brick in good shape and free of cracking. And as we move forward, we'll see the same on this side. We'll actually see in the middle of this particular lentil, there's a slight sag, and some of that's reflective up. What's, as a very selfish inspector, you learn to appreciate a painted wall. And what I mean by that is, on a painted wall, if there's cracks reflecting through the paint, it's a new crack. On a painted wall, if there's no cracks in the paint, then the paint is newer than the crack. And so it always gives you a great idea of kind of an historic principle or historic perspective of what's going on. So when I look at this lentil with this slight sag and don't see anything reflecting upward, even all the way up into the lentil, then that pleases me to say that it's probably something that happened quite some time ago. And so I'm not concerned about that. I have a scupper here coming out the building. What a scupper is a roof drain. That really should extend out. You'll see the scupper that's further down the line. That's beautiful. That's got a nice wide pan and an awesome downspout. This particular scupper here is small. We'll see some openings around it, so it probably leaks a little bit. And then on top of that, we're just evacuating our water straight down on the building. And so by evacuating the water unencumbered, we could cause some masonry problems down the line. So that's certainly something I'm going to want to alert my client to. I don't concern myself with power poles. And then as we move backwards over here, we know this is somebody else's space. I would have asked my client during the preliminary walkthrough or during our interview process about the building maintenance. In this particular case, he is not responsible for anything on the roof. That's responsible by an association / building owner. He's only a tenant, and I'm being hired for a tenant space. So I'm not going to concern myself with anything heading this way. Inspector safety has to be number one in every inspection. It's your job to go home every night, not necessarily to perform the inspection, but to make sure you go home. The standards say that we do not have to climb roofs we don't have access to. When you look at this roof, it's a pretty simple access. My normal articulating ladder does have the ability to touch this roof. I know I can get onto it safely. I have chosen this side versus going over the parapet is because I know I have an anchor point. I have a solid toe point on the bottom for the feet, as well as I can get on this roof in the absolute shortest distance possible. When erecting my ladder, I made sure that I've got the right angle. The right angle is my toes touching the bottom of the ladder on the feet, and my arms outstretched. That roughly creates a 71-degree angle, which is our optimal. While I don't want to be, in most cases, more than 2 rungs above the roof line, by going 3, I'm able to bury the head of my ladder up against the parapet wall to keep it from sliding. as well as this particular roof, I have got an 8-inch gutter pan. And that 8-inch gutter pan is a lot more for me to step across. By having that little bit of extra space up there to hold on to is going to make it safer for me to get up on the roof. So with that, let's get on the roof. So on the ground, we talked about this roof is maintained by the building owner. But we're up here. So let's take a look at it. And by taking a look at it, we're going to let our clients know if there's anything going on. This roof is a TPO roof. It's a thermoplastic roof. These are great roofs. They're white, they reflect, they're not black, they don't absorb. A roof like this is adhered. You can see the little dots. The little dots are for the adhesion points. And then this roof is thermally set, which means that it was heat glued down. So it's not going to move. So by putting the roof over the edge like this and creating the barrel allows the seams to not be in the line of water traffic. These particular barrel truss roofs, they have one design flaw. And that design flaw is as the water sheds off the roof, it wants to hit this parapet wall. And when it hits the parapet wall, it wants to go into this trough. And so what we got to be always mindful of is ponding. And so when you take a look at a spot like this, it periodically ponds. And that ponding water, if we have a leak or a seam problem or anything in this area, that's what's going to be conducive to water on the inside of the building. So as we do the roof inspection, we want to watch and see as the roof comes up, how is it coming up? Is it coming all the way up the parapet? Do we have coping? In this particular roof, we put a slurried coping cap on. So instead of a solid cap, whether it's masonry or metal or stone, in this particular case, it was just the brick and all the extra mortar popped on like you're putting peanut butter on bread. And in that case, we've actually rolled this roof material over to create the seal and to create a little bit of a coping cap. But we want to watch to make sure that we don't have any water going in. So if we were doing a full roof inspection on this, that's what we'd be looking for. These are all flash points. These are all vents that would be for bathroom fans, etc. But we have two interesting features that I want to talk about next. So what I wanted to talk about were these two bubble skylights that we have. They're a very interesting feature on buildings. Now these two particular bubble skylights are actually put into a box. But what they allow is the sunlight to go down, and they go through a polished cylinder to the inside. I can't wait to show you what that looks like on the inside. But when we look at this around the outside, you want to watch the flash points. Again, when we put the TPO on, we have to create this detail, which is our flash point. And so we want to watch to make sure the head flashing looks good, to make sure everything's sealed, which this does. This looks good. And I'll look at the other one and do the same thing. And again, this looks nice and sealed. So I'm very happy with these skylights, but I can't wait to show you what they look like on the inside. So this is a packaged unit. Either they call them RTUs for rooftop unit, or it's a packaged unit. Why they call it a packaged unit is because the heat and the cool are in the same cabinet. In this particular case, this is a downflow unit. Like any other HVAC inspection that you've ever done in your entire career, the first thing you need to identify is the brand and the model and the age. So in this particular case, it's a Carrier. Its model number and serial number are right here. It runs in the exact same numerical order that you're familiar with any other inspection. This is a 2018 model year. And so we'll walk through this. It has to have a service disconnect so that anybody working on the unit has the ability to own the unit when they're working on it. That includes yourself if you're going to take it apart. It also needs to have a weather-tight convenience outlet. That convenience outlet should be GFCI protected, and you can absolutely trip and reset that if you desire. I don't see convenience outlets on every unit. This is very good. If I don't have a convenience outlet, that would absolutely be something I'm going to communicate in my report. As we go through, the condensing side is on this side. So these are the condensing fins. Where Carrier has an advantage in the marketplace is they put these steel fins on. By having the steel fins, I don't worry about hail damage going on to the fins that are inside going around the coil. If I have hail damage, that's something I want to note. Once you dent more than 20% of the fins on any unit, that unit's not going to cool to its potential. And so I'll migrate around the whole unit, checking out the fins again. And this particular Carrier unit does have a feature on it we call an Economizer. That's what this is. What an Economizer does is it's got a damper control on the inside. And when the sensors on the inside say that it needs more fresh air, it will come on. So some units don't have economizers where others do. And so I was looking at the neighbors to see if they had an economizer, and they do as well on their Goodman. But on this particular unit, when we look inside, we'll see a cold air return side and we'll see a supply side. And that's what's cycling the air through the packaged unit. But again, whenever the system senses that it needs more fresh air, then the economizer opens up. When inspecting the economizer, we want to make sure the fin structure is in good shape. It's an aluminum fin system, so we want to make sure it doesn't have any openings. The other key thing when looking at economizers is you want to look around the front of the unit to make sure we don't have any plumbing vents. If there's a plumbing vent right here, the exhaust from the plumbing waste is going to go right to the economizer, and you wonder why the inside of the unit does not smell pretty. So on packaged units, just like any other HVAC unit, we have a condensate that comes off the evaporative coil. That condensate is right here. You'll see it does have a trap. We do have to have traps on these condensates, because if it was a straight tube, then that allows any fouling, any debris, any foul air that encompasses around here to be able to go right in the unit. So we want to watch to make sure that that goes out. One of the other advantages that we have with a TPO roof is its resiliency to damage from certain things. Certain things would be oils and acids. So the condensate or the carbonic acid that comes off of the air conditioner could damage some roof styles. The grease that might be coming off of a kitchen exhaust could damage some roof styles. It doesn't do to a TPO, it just makes it very slippery. So that makes your inspection all that more important to be safe. So the tag I showed on the other side is the shipping tag. And that actually matches the tag, the normal label that we would have here, the normal Carrier label. It has the exact same principles and the exact same ideas that you would have. You'd be able to calculate, here's your 180,000 BTU unit as far as the heating capacity, and then you'd be able to do your math and find out what its cooling capacity is as well. And then on the other side, as we migrate all the way around, we have the discharge, which is right here, for the flue gases. And you cycle this through when we do the inspection and make sure that the heating comes on versus the cooling. And so that would discharge right here. Inside of this chamber, just like the inside of this chamber is actually our filter compartment. And that would open up by just using a combination wrench. I don't open these units during my inspections. I note the presence of them, and I'll take a picture of it, and I'll show my clients exactly where the filter location is. But I don't dismantle these units. Other inspectors do, and that's great, but to the standard, you do not have to dismantle these units during your inspection. So with the conclusion of the inspection of the RTU, we're done up here on the roof. So with that, let's get off the roof. I want to look at the gas meters that are over in the side of the building, and then we'll head inside and complete the rest of the inspection. So this is a commercial building. And with a commercial building, it might have a different type of gas meter, especially if it's a restaurant. In one half of the building, there's a brewery, uses a great deal of gas. And this unit doesn't have much gas, but this is our gas meter apparatus. We've got our meters, we've got our pressure regulators. And so all I want to do is make sure that I don't have any strong gas smell or anything else around it. And then I take a picture to make sure it's protected. We do have two wonderful bollards sitting right here next to the unit, so I don't have to worry about it getting hit by a car or anything else in the area. So the funny thing about inspectors and inspections is most of us have a little bit of a type A personality and we have a lot of OCD with ourselves. Not saying that's bad. I know I'm certainly one of them, and so we're all creatures of habit. By creating a habit, we know we don't make mistakes. And so you might be an inspector who will walk into a building and go counterclockwise. You might be an inspector that walks into a building and goes clockwise around the building. I will do it either way, but I always try to be logical to how the building's laid out. So in this particular building, we're gonna go clockwise. And so by coming into the building, I want to do the interiors. And so we're going to do these interiors in one whole swoop. And as I do the interiors, how I'm able to be the most efficient as an inspector. Spend as little time on the property as needed and not walk the same spot twice is by doing every system, every component simultaneously. So what I mean by that is I would come in, and I'm already addressing, looking around the inside, looking for water entry, looking for structural damage that I might see, and looking to see what I have. I come up to this cabinet that I have right here, and I'm immediately greeted with our backflow preventer. And so by having the backflow preventer, I know that this is where my main water is coming in, and this backflow preventer is here. I always want to make sure that I have a tag on it to make sure I know the last time it was inspected. And they're usually got to be inspected annually. This was November 15th of 21, so I know that sometime between now and November of 22, it needs to be inspected again. And I look for leakage. As an inspector, I'm pretty happy to see a bunch of paper products stored around the backflow preventer, because then that would tell me that it's not leaking. If the paper products were all moldy and wet and I could smell it, then I would pretty much know that I got a problem with the backflow preventer. Then as I go around the rest of the building, I'm gonna watch my windows. We have these overhead doors. We're not gonna exercise the doors in this building because they are secured. I do not unsecure doors. And so I would make a comment in my report about the secured door, but it is secured here, as well as it's secured in the opener. I'll take my outlet tester out, test for the polarity of the outlet to make sure it's in good shape. And then I will open up the access panel that's here. Now this, if you were doing the math on the outside, is where the gas meters are. And so this gives me access to a water shutoff here on a 1/2-inch line, as well as our gas pipes as they migrate through the building. If you took a panel off, you gotta always make sure that you leave everything exactly as you find it. And then we'll migrate through the building. One of the things we have on this type of construction, remember the barrel truss, is we have to support that truss. That truss in this particular building is steel. Not all these barrel trusses are steel. Some of them are wood. If they're wood, you have to really be mindful of every one of the gussets, every one of the cords, and every one of the struts need to be in good shape. Good shape means I don't see cracks, I don't see deterioration. With steel, and this is riveted steel, to give you the age in the 1926 era, then it's pretty solid. It looks great. And then on top of the truss, then we have these purlins that come off, and then that's our roof structure, and then our roof decking is wood. We couldn't do this type of structure today because of the fire rating. Firefighters would have troubles in a fire in this building because the roof would collapse pretty quickly in the event of a fire. But it's old. It's been here a long time, and so it's kind of non-conformingly fine. But then we have to be mindful of where is the truss's attachment to the building, and that's right here on this pilaster. On this particular pilaster, we've got this mass here of brick, and our truss lays on it, and then complementary on the opposite side. As we migrate around the building clockwise, we'll actually see where that goes through. So on the outside of the building, we had that new steel pediment or decorative festoon that they put on the front of the building, and that kind of makes that contour and breaks up the flatness of the building. When I told you we wanted to look at the bolts, so on the inside, These are the bolts and the washers that they've put on to anchor that in place. And the big thing that I'm trying to be mindful of on my inspection is, do I have any water streaks or any what would appear to be communication between the outside and the inside? And in this particular case, looking across here, this looks fabulous. So I don't have any issue with that. Outside on the building, we talked about paint, and paint being the inspector's best friend. In this particular building, we have a really unique situation. Do you remember outside we talked about the wheel kickers? And those are the things that would kick your tire away from the glancing blow coming in the front door. This door has been impacted at some point in its life. If you look above it right here, you'll actually see the masonry has been pushed outward. You didn't see that on the outside, but you do see it on the inside. But what I also see is the fact that there's paint throughout the inside of that scar. And so that again would tell me that it's nothing that's new, nothing that's active. It's something that happened quite a long time ago. But yet there is a scar here that I would want to alert my clients to. Then we'd migrate around the rest of the building, making sure that we go through all the exterior walls. The same situation that we had on the outside, we want to look on the inside, watching our window sealants. But if we had a problem on the outside, we'd actually see it along the base on the inside, which I don't see anything. So this looks very good. We come over to our lighting array. These are all of our interior lights. This is a sound control here for the ambient sound that they have going through here. That's certainly beyond our scope. Check out our door, make sure it opens and closes and operates as it should. What we also want to be mindful of is how is the closure unit. The door shouldn't whip closed. It should have a little bit of a hesitation so that it doesn't hit somebody in the heels as they're evacuating, but then it also should close all the way and not stop ajar. And so this one looks in good shape. If we have a problem, these are all oil filled and they can be adjusted, but it's certainly something we want to be mindful of with our clients. And then I just cycle through the rest of the interior, checking outlets, checking everything else out. So let me check those as I walk this way. I'll do a sample of the outlets. I certainly won't do every outlet, but I want to make sure that I do enough that it tells my story. In looking at the furnace and the package unit that's up on the roof, we've already looked at the outside. We saw that it's a 2018 unit. We saw that the cabinet looked fantastic. We saw a nice steady drip coming out of the condensate. And so this is our thermostat. And so this particular thermostat, it's just a pretty normal up and down thermostat. Right now it's telling us our interior temperature is 75. It says it's set at 69. So when I see that, we're an empty building. We don't have any patrons here. And it's not recovered. So my guess is if my client asks me any questions about the energy efficiency of this building, I'd probably have to say that it's fairly minimal. All we have is a lot of glass. The glass does have some energy rating, a little bit of masonry as we look around, but then we have a roof deck with no insulation. It's a little bit of insulation they added on top of the roof deck, but that's certainly not much. And so I would assume that this unit does have a little bit of challenges recovering. When we look at these units, we also want to step back and look at our ductwork. In this particular RTU, remember we had one RTU unit up on the roof, and it came down straight. It's located right at the peak of the roof, and so on the bottom of the RTU, we do have the return side, and then we do have our supply trunking. And our supply trunking then it allows that air to be distributed around the rest of the building. And so as we look at these, we want to make sure that they are operating. They are pushing out temperature. And so there's a couple different ways you can do that. You could use an infrared camera, which I'll turn mine on, or you could use just a simple thermometer. In this particular case, I'm sucking in 76, and I'm pushing out a little bit less. I'm having troubles because of the fan getting a good temperature. Let me see here. Yeah, it's about 68. So that's again a factor of the recovery. And so we use the infrared camera, get a little bit better rating on it. You would test this exactly like you'd test any other furnace. In air conditioning, you want to be 14 to 22 degrees, or whatever the parameters are that you use in your inspections. And on the heating side, we just want to make sure it's providing heat. I'm almost turned on here. And so once this thing gets on and calibrated, we'll take a really good temperature. But when you look at the cold air return on this, it is pretty dirty. There is a lot of obstruction up there. My assumption would be on a unit like this, it's probably partially choked. That could also attribute to why it's not cooling as well as it could. I bet the filters are clogged. When I see this amount of debris up there, then 75, 67. So definitely not cooling to where it should be. I would definitely encourage my clients to have to change the filters, as well as to maybe have a technician out. It's a 2018 unit, so it ought to be working a lot better than it is. But the other interesting thing that we have to be mindful of, to change the filters on this unit, I have to go all the way up to the roof. And a lot of building owners, a lot of tenants don't do that. So it's very possible that this filter has not been changed since 2018. Unlike a home inspection where fire extinguishers are encouraged but not mandatory, in commercial inspections they're absolutely mandatory. And in this particular case, you're not supposed to be able to walk more than 75 feet to hit any fire extinguisher. Here is our fire extinguisher. I always want to open them up. I always want to look at the date. It's supposed to be within 12 months for compliance. This one is perfectly in compliance. This is awesome. If you wanted to take the next step, this is monitored by Cintas. It's a large brand company. There's a lot of companies that monitor these. It also should be the appropriate type for the building and what it's being used for. There's all kinds of different types of fire extinguishers. The other thing we need to have is we need to have exit illumination. Not only exit illumination to let any patron or anybody that's in the building know where the exit lights are, kind of like we get on a plane, go here, 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 here. We also have to have emergency lighting. The particular lights that we have in this building, they're all in together. The exit light and the emergency lights are all tied together, and they're above both doors. So many buildings have been manipulated through the years. This particular building being one. They've added this false ceiling. The interior design architect has added this false ceiling. And on this false ceiling is to allow this delineation above what we'll call the display and the service area. Now the rule is we're not allowed to come in here and use the existing truss as a support mechanism. That truss is meant to hold the roof up, not to hold this false ceiling up. So if I came in and saw that they're hanging things from this truss, not lights, but structural elements, then I'd have a problem. We're going to start bringing that roof down, maybe compromising that truss. So in this particular case, they've had to add steel all the way up, and then add these brackets, these hangers, and these 2x12s on all four sides to support this false ceiling. By doing that, I can stand here and it appears to be engineered. It appears to be done in a workman type manner. And so as long as it's level and as long as it's plumb, I'm satisfied with it. I would also want to make sure that I take a good look, which I'm going to now, to make sure I don't see where there's any spots of that wood that has begun to fracture and or crack. And they look good. A lot of commercial buildings, especially warehouses, industrial spaces, and converted old mechanics garages have overhead doors. These doors might have a mechanical or automatic opener. This particular one does. We're not operating it. Again, we're in an occupied space. It is a secured space. We are here after hours, and there's a fear that we're not going to lock it properly. And so with that, we're going to disclaim it on our report, but I want to show all the items that I would want to inspect. First is the button. All commercial openers have a standard 3 button. There's the open, there's the close, and there's the stop. In some of these, they've actually wired it so that in order to close it, you must hold it and depress the button the entire time. If we have a power outage, if we have a failure, or if we want to bypass, we also have a chain drive. You pull, 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 and in this particular case, it does have a nice chain lock down here at the bottom to keep somebody from breaking the window and getting around it. And then we have a pretty standard hasp lock that crosses over it. But these are great units. They're really safe, they're really secure, and they really do a nice job on commercial buildings. Every inspector and inspection firm is going to have a different level of comfort when it comes to a commercial kitchen. As commercial kitchens go, this is probably about the most minimal commercial kitchen you'll ever get the opportunity to inspect. But what's wonderful is, as far as commercial kitchens go, this is probably the standard minimal kitchen that you're going to want to inspect. This is a kitchen that does not do any food prep, so we do not have any hoods or anything else. But with all commercial kitchens, they have to start with a hand sink. We have to have a hand sanitizing sink that produces both hot and cold water. So you need to make sure we have hot water, which we do. And so we ought to make sure we have that. And then we look at the drain to make sure it drains out to its designation. We'll show you that in a minute. So we have to have a hand sink in every kitchen, regardless of if it's a food truck, regardless of it's somebody's backyard doing a commercial cook for a barbecue. They have to have a spot that they can wash hands. So that's our hand sink. Then as we move across, I would consider this beverage area all part of the commercial kitchen build out, not as part of the commercial kitchen permanent features. So in other words, if this tenant leaves and a new tenant comes, this beverage area is probably leaving. If your client asks you if it's working, then you can do something as silly as take a temperature and go, yep, it's 37 degrees. And then we come over here, we have a second, this is called a utensil rinse. And then this is a triple basin. With a triple basin sink, not a triple basin drain system that we'd have in an industrial warehouse, but on this particular sink, one is for hot water rinse, one is for sanitizer, and one is final rinse. And so you would fill up on every shift the proper tablets and the proper array, fill it up so that you can wash. With the commercial kitchen, they're unique in the fact that we don't plumb directly into the main sewer. We go indirectly into the main sewer, so that when we're running our plumbing, it actually comes down through this whole mess that we have here into a raised floor drain. That does a bunch of things. One, that prevents any sewer backup into the system, so it's almost like an air gap. But two, it allows us to see what's going on, and it makes it really easy that if I have debris that goes through the sink, I can accumulate it and clean it out. So you'll see that any drain that we have that goes through a kitchen has to cycle through there. Now the one thing as we go through this commercial kitchen, just like any other kitchen you inspect, we actually have a broken faucet. And on this broken faucet, we're actually evacuating water right out the top of the handle. So in this particular case, that has to probably get rebuilt. So I would run the hot, I'd run the cold, I'd make sure all of this system is working, and then I'd just migrate around again. I don't care about the coffee makers or the panini press. I'm just watching the drainage, and I'm just watching the installed systems. And then lastly, I would want to make sure that wherever I see electricity, if I can get to it, they are on ground faulted. And in this particular case, I don't see ground faulting. I see a lot of outlets that are labeled, and so when I go look in the main electric panel, I'm going to look to see if I have labels in the electric panel. If I don't have labeled ground faulting electric panel, then that would be a suggestion I'm going to make to my clients. Heading down the hall of the bathroom is always tough on videotape because it becomes the echo chamber of the universe. But we have to have working bathrooms, and so when we come into these bathrooms, we're going to want to come in here. And the biggest thing on bathrooms is the flushing element must flush and the sink element must drain. Pretty simple stuff. But the interesting thing when it comes to sinks, most of our commercial sinks are all wall-hung sinks. And so when we have a wall-hung sink, it's important to give it a little upward pressure. Because it's so easy for somebody to come in here to wash their hands and they lean on these things and they start pulling off the wall. So I just give it a little pressure and I turn the water on. We do have GFCIs here, and then I'll flush the toilet. Toilet does not flush and does not work. So we'll make sure that we put that on the report for us. And then we'll go do the other bathroom. I really love the feature in these bathrooms of having motion sensing lighting. This is very good for saving electricity, but it's also good for closing. You know, if you have motion sensing lighting, that you don't have to go make the march around the whole building to verify all the lights are off. This will shut off in a programmed period of time. So we'll move over to the other bathroom and do the same thing. Check out the sink, turn the water on, check out the toilet, and that worked fabulously. Then on top of that, we'll shut this off, and then I want to show one more interesting feature for us, and that's right here on the wall. If my client hired me to do a sewer scope at the same time, this would be my access point. I can see where the concrete's been cut out, and this would be a spot I'd open up, and my guess would be, this would be where my sewer is, so I can do the clean out and do a sewer scope for them. So if we've done what I would assume would be the structure, we looked at the slab, we didn't have any issues. We've looked at the truss, we've looked at the roof deck, we've looked at the roof surface, we've done the RTU, we've done the exterior, we've run the plumbing, bathrooms. Our last system is the electric box. And so this is where our electric box is. We're calling it panel L3, fed from the main at the back of the house. I don't know what the house is instead of the building, but it is nicely labeled. So that would tell us that the electricity is coming from a main source somewhere outside of this unit. Whether or not I have access to that, I don't know at this moment, but this is where it's at. I have not touched the panel. I will not touch the panel until I've figured out if it's energized or not. I've got two ways I can do it. One, I can take my right hand, rub my right hand knuckles on it, and if the hair on my knuckles starts to stand up, I know it's energized. Or I could use a non-contact tester. Once I've verified the panel is safe to open, I will open it. Opening up the panel. Now the interesting thing is, a lot of commercial panels have a lock on them. Locks are important to keep people who shouldn't be in them from them. So that's why a lot of inspectors will carry keys. And so I do have a square D key. I could open this thing up, unlock it, and get into the panel. But that's important to kind of identify. So then I would come into this panel, and I want to make sure the door can open at least 90 degrees. This one can. Now this is a commercial graded panel. It's got an inner door, a dead front cover, and it's extremely heavy. I do not have any personal expectation that I am going to remove this dead front cover. A, because of the weight, and B, because of its style. I have to take out these 6 screws. And by taking out those 6 screws, I only remove this cover. And then I still have the inner dead front cover behind it. And I would not remove that either. So I'm not going to remove this panel. What I am going to do is I would take an abstract picture of this. I would take a picture down here of our main. This panel was rated at 225 amp. Most likely it is a 200 amp service disconnect. It is 240, 3-phase, 4-wire. With phases, it allows for more power. That large rooftop unit that we have takes a lot more power to operate the air conditioner and the fan unit. So this top breaker that we have up here, if we look at the label, it says RTU. This is a 3-phase breaker. Do you see how it accommodates for 3 different buses? This is a single phase 240 volt. It only accommodates 2 buses. This is 120 volt. It only goes after 1 of the buses or service lines. And so that's 120, 240, single phase, and 240 3-phase. We do have 2 open knockouts down here that they have beautifully filled with the appropriate fills, so we don't have to worry about safety. And so this looks really, really good. And then I have all of my GFCIs for all of the things that are located in the kitchen area. And so that's excellent. And so then the wonderful thing about this is we do have this absolutely terrific labeling. With the labeling, they've actually gone so far as labeled each of the receptacles throughout the building. So if we look at the receptacle that's right here, this is L3, 5. This panel is L3, as you recall, so this would be the 5th circuit receptacles. And as we go through the entire unit, every receptacle in this unit had the same type of labeling. So that's excellent for anybody coming to service this unit. So with this, I've taken a picture of this. I've taken a picture. I have got my safety. Again, for those that don't remember safety, I need 30 inches side to side. I need 36 inches front to back. And I need 78 inches top to bottom. I have all of that right here. Nothing can be in this space. I can't have a garbage can in this space. I can't have somebody store a mop in this space. It has to only be a space for electric. So with that, I am going to conclude this inspection over by the front door. So when I'm wrapping up my inspections, I like to take, especially if my clients are participatory or at least present, is I like to wrap up my inspections and talk about what we found. Some of the things that I would want to highlight would be how the parapet wall and the coping roll over, and they want to watch, make sure we don't have a lot of cracking in that. I'm going to talk about the toilet that doesn't work at all. I'm going to talk about the sink and the faucet that's missing its packing and probably needs washers and attention. But the rest of the building is really, really in good shape. But the most important thing that I think they need to attend to, besides the toilet's a kind of important thing, especially in a coffee shop, but we're not going to go there, is I want to make sure that they get the furnace serviced and that heating plant serviced. I think the filters need to be changed, and I definitely think the cold air return is partially obstructed and needs to be addressed. Then I'd ask them if they have any other questions. I'd thank them for their business, make sure I left with my check, and told them they'll get the report later tonight.